A lark and her momster are coming your way. Gonna tell it how it is, so won't you join us today? And we're live.
We are, and I think it's a good thing that we're live because
Yes.
there are unfortunately some people who are not so fortunate.
Yes. So today's episode is going to be a little bit more somber than what you're probably used to, but that's because we are dedicating today's episode to our home,
Our hometown.
our hometown of New Orleans, Louisiana.
NOLA.
Good old NOLA.
Are you going to say who you are?
I was eventually going to say who I was. So I am Larkin. I am the Lark of the Momster duo, and you are
I'm the momster.
the Momster. And today we really just wanted to take this time to dedicate our love to New Orleans, Louisiana, and remember those who unfortunately lost their lives in the tragic
And those who've been injured.
And those who've been injured,
Families
and the
that are left behind.
tragic
families.
terrorist attack that occurred, unfortunately, on the 1st of this year. Not a great way to bring in 2025.
But it's also an opportunity, I think, in this episode to recognize the resilience of our hometown. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit.
We will.
But we start every episode with a wine.
We do.
And it was a little bit of a strange
This was a coincidence,
Yeah.
serendipitous wine.
situation.
Because you literally said, hey, I want to do this episode about, NOLA. And my mom said, she was telling me this on the phone, and she said, go look at the wine that we have
That's in the fridge
That's
already.
in the fridge. Go look at the wine and let me know what it's called. And it's by Emendis, but the wine is Robert de NOLA.
Right.
Spelled Nola, and it is a Cava Brut Rosé. So kind of serendipitous that I was like, oh, it's Robert de NOLA.
And it's actually out of Italy. But as we'll learn a little bit later, there is a fair amount of Italian, especially
Oh yeah,
Sicilian
in
heritage in New Orleans. So
indeed.
anyway,
But this wine has a bright salmon robe. It's a generous cava that has a fine stream of bubbles forming a true corona. The nose is rich with aromas of wild berries and red currant. On the palate, it begins as slightly piquant with spicy notes, but it ends with a balanced acidity, leaving notes of brioche on a long finish. I don't know what a long finish is, but
it just has a
It's
nice aftertaste.
Y'all, it tastes good. It's
It
nice.
does.
I do like it.
It is really a good wine.
Yes.
And I'm not always a big fan of rosés, but with Brut rosés, it's sometimes a mix of whether I'll like it or not like it. But this one is really good.
It is really good.
I also want to acknowledge that I'm drinking out of my etched NOLA wine glass.
And I am drinking out of my streetcar wine glass.
So this is truly an episode dedicated to our hometown. Mm-hmm. And I think in the aftermath of the New Year's travesty, it's important to really recognize what makes NOLA special. Mm-hmm. This is a way, as you mentioned before, for us to honor those whose lives were lost or forever changed.
Yeah.
While also really recognizing the resilience of New Orleans. What makes this place so special is its sense of family.
It's so true. It's like, if you're from New Orleans, you're a brother or a sister no matter what.
And that's across the world. It's amazing.
It is. It really is.
It really is.
Even if you're not related by blood, everyone who enters a home, shop, restaurant, hotel, or any business basically is referred to as
darlin,
or
honey,
or my favorite, baby. Hey, baby, how you doing, baby? My favorite. If I just want to go and feel good, I'll go someplace. I'll go into a store or a marketplace, and I love hearing how you doing, baby? Oh, how you doing, darling? It's just, I don't know. There's just something about it. It's like no other place. And it's said no other way than
That's
in
true.
New Orleans.
And no one ever really thinks it when they're calling you baby or honey or darling. You know, in other parts of the world, you might think of those as kind of derogatory terms. Or,
Yeah,
but they're not. They're
No,
not
not here.
demeaning because the people saying them are downright genuine.
absolutely.
You know,
Yes.
it's just people in New Orleans embrace others with open arms, and they truly live up to that laissez le bon temps rouler mentality. Let
Yeah,
the good times
times roll.
roll.
Yeah.
And it probably comes out of a lot of hardship over the generations.
Oh, it's definitely a city that was built out of a lot of darkness, you know, but it's amazing that through that darkness came one of the brightest, most colorful, beautiful, creative cities, I think, in the world.
And if it just didn't have its temperature,
Oh, yeah.
I would totally live there
Same.
again.
Or like the flying roaches, y'all.
Yeah, there is something to be said about those flying
It's-
roaches.
They're like birds.
It's a place unlike anywhere else in the world, and
Truly.
it is so special. So we thought we'd spend today talking about some of the things that make it special.
Yes.
For example, the words.
Oh, the words.
The words. Try pronouncing TCHOUPITOULAS.
I just want to say that I've seen football players do this who play for the Saints, and they can't quite pronounce it.
Can't
but
say Chapatulas.
They can't say Chapatulas. Nope. Nope.
Yeah.
Or, Calliope.
Butchering the Muses. So
Where's the Muses? Yes.
Uptown New Orleans has streets named after all 9 of the Muses. Mm-hmm. But they are not pronounced the way they were intended to be pronounced. For example, Terpsichore, which is one of the Muses, in New Orleans is pronounced terpsichore. Melpomene is pronounced melpomene. Mm-hmm. Thalia actually is pronounced correctly.
Thalia. Mm-hmm.
Cleo. The debate is whether it's Clio or Cleo, depending on what part of the world you're in.
I feel like it's Cleo.
It's Cleo in New Orleans.
I think it's Cleo. Mm-hmm.
As you said,
Calliope.
but it's actually Calliope.
Is it really?
Yes. In New
Okay,
Orleans,
well, I don't know. I know some people that say Calliope.
No. In New Orleans, they say the Calliope because there
Calliope.
used to be the Calliope projects.
That's true. Okay,
Yes.
Good point. And then you chirp.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And Urania, mm-hmm. Polonia, mm-hmm. and Erato. But they don't get pronounced that way. But those are smaller streets, so we don't see them on a regular basis, so you don't get to hear how they're butchered.
It is fun because you do. I do remember driving and trying to pronounce like Demundrian, right?
Right.
Yeah.
In Nashville, right.
Well, no, isn't there a Demundrian?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Only
JK, guys.
Not New Orleans, but there are a lot of streets.
Well, there are a lot of streets that
think about the fact when I lived in the French Quarter in Burgundy.
Right.
Burgundy.
Right, that's true.
In New Orleans, we say Burgundy.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So we tend in New Orleans to pronounce things in our own special ways.
And you have like your own sayings too that, you know, I know when I've said things like, I'm going to go make the groceries. People are like, you're going to go what?
I'm going to make the groceries and I'm going to take them home and save them, darling. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go to the Schwagemans.
I'm making the groceries and I'll save them.
Or the Dorniaks.
Dorniaks.
My best friend Stacy still gives me a hard time because I say Dorniaks and she says Dorgnaks. And I'm like, she laughs. She's like, you say it wrong. I'm like, no, I
feel
don't.
like everyone else says Dorniak. Sorry, Stacey.
No. But a lot of people agree with her. So
interesting.
even in New Orleans, there are different ways of saying things, right?
Right.
You know, one of the things that I can remember saying when I moved other places as an adult is, where are you going? Oh, you're going to your mom and them's.
Your mom and them's. I've heard that one.
Yeah. You're going to your mom and them's. Oh, okay. Or I'm going to my mama's.
Yeah.
And people are like, huh?
Yeah.
But I think in the broader collective, the Saints, the New Orleans Saints, which, by the way, I just heard that Drew Brees is the new coach.
Stop. You stop that. I'm going to have to pause this. Hold on. Y'all, she lied. Sorry, I got excited over nothing. Drew Brees is not the new coach.
Why did I see that?
I don't know.
Hold on.
Really let me down there, though.
No, it's somebody named John Rizzi. But anyway, now I've got to figure out, what is Drew Brees doing?
But we'll do that later on, even though we love that man.
Yeah, we really do.
We really love that man.
And
anyway. We love our Saints, which is something that I can say about New Orleans, too, is we will be diehard Saints fans through and through, even when they're losing. I mean, we might call them the Aints for a little while.
And wear paper bags over our heads while we're
at the game.
At the game.
Yes. But at the end of the day,
nobody better mess. It's like
nobody messes with our Saints.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like you can talk about your husband, but nobody else can talk about your husband.
Right, exactly.
You can talk about your kids, but nobody else can talk about your kids. Right?
Exactly. It's just like that with the Saints.
So
and honestly, I feel like it's that community of that's just so different. Like you do see other football teams that are really behind their team, but the Saints are part of the city. Like they are part of New Orleans.
They're part of the culture.
Yeah, exactly.
The New Orleans culture.
Yeah.
And speaking of culture, you know, when you think about New Orleans and which populations kind of made New Orleans, a lot of people recognize the French and the Spanish influence, but they don't recognize that there was a lot of African and Haitian influence.
Yeah.
And then you have to throw in the Irish, and the Germans, and the Sicilians,
because we know about those mob bosses in New Orleans. We sure
There's
do.
actually a photo of your mom, Pat O'Brien's, in her early 20s, with
Mom's got stories.
Yeah, with one of the Marcelluses. Anyway, and later in the 20th century. Hondurans, aka like your dad.
Yep.
His parents came into New Orleans. There were a lot of people from Vietnam and other areas of Southeast Asia.
Yep.
And people from the Middle East.
It's really like a melting pot. It really is. It's
gumbo.
It's gumbo.
It's totally gumbo,
baby. It is.
Another really important part of New Orleans, and it's something that I've always enjoyed and embraced, and having lived in the French Quarter, grown up going to the French Quarter, living in the French Quarter, raising you when you were little, bringing you to the French Quarter.
Oh gosh,
I always appreciated the gay pride. It's been integral to the city. And that really does come out during Mardi Gras and the New Year's Eve celebrations. They bring out the best and the most extravagant drag queen shows.
And I just want to say that I grew up perfectly fine, and I grew up with all of this, y'all. I saw all of this at a real young age, and guess what? I'm perfectly fine.
Because as a small child, because New Orleans is New Orleans, I would be able to bundle you up and take you down to the Marigny to listen to music, or to the French Quarter to go hang out and observe all of the craziness
and the wonderfulness.
And they also have some of the most exotic and scandalous costumes.
Well, even like the Mardi Gras Indians, right? Those.
Oh my God, yes.
Those that regalia is just so beautiful, and it's just like you see it nowhere else other than New Orleans.
Mardi Gras Indians are just so amazing.
They're stunning.
Think about
it gets passed down over
generation
to generation. It's just so beautiful.
And think about just the whole concept of Mardi Gras and the cruise and Zulu and Endymion and Bacchus and music. I mean, there's just it's a culture in and of itself. It is part and parcel of the city.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Even their funerals are different.
Which I love their funerals, because while sometimes they will have a dirge, even after the dirge, they will have something called a
second line.
A second line.
Yeah, it's really the celebration.
It is.
And the dirge is often incorporated into the second. It's like it melds from one part to another.
Right.
And, when your Gami died, and I was trying to decide how to honor her life and to recognize her death, I thought, this is a woman who loved her second lines. If there was one and we were in the quarter,
we would join.
She was joining in on that second line. So we did a second line for her.
Yeah, and people joined in. I mean, strangers join in. Because in New Orleans, they're not strangers. It's family.
Exactly.
It's,
It's like open our arms.
Absolutely.
And just let everybody know that they're welcome. Definitely. Yep. Definitely. The other thing that's really different about New Orleans is its history. It kind of exists in a world of its own. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know, but mostly unfortunately, based on some of the things that happen in the state, the world of New Orleans exists within the state of Louisiana, which
we just want to say that New Orleans is like a separate entity. We don't always, we know we're in Louisiana, but New Orleans is New Orleans, if you get my drift.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Totally.
Okay. Cool.
Totally.
Cool.
But it's still part of a state in which it has parishes rather than counties. It's the only state in the United States that has parishes instead of counties. It's also the only state in the United States that practices law under the Napoleonic Code rather than common law.
If y'all look up laws in New Orleans and they look strange as all get out, I'm going to tell you, they're real.
Yep.
It's real. Those laws are real. And while you can't drive drunk, we do have drive-through daiquiri stations. So,
amen.
Welcome to the irony of it all.
That's right. And the French Quarter is one of those places where you can walk around with a drink in your hand. It's strongly encouraged as long as it's not in a glass bottle.
Absolutely. And even the city sometimes. I kind of sometimes equate New Orleans to Gotham City a little bit.
Well, across the state in general, including in the city of New Orleans, we're well known for kind of skirting the law.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of deals are made with handshakes in back rooms, and those backroom deals are part of history.
Yeah.
And kind of lead into the culture of the city. And speaking of which, many people are very familiar with Huey P. Long. And we are somehow or another related to Huey P. Long. I'm not real sure how, but...
Wait, do we want to be?
No.
Oh.
But that's not the point. Anyway. But those kind of backroom deals, the kind of slimy handshakes, all of those things...
It's Gotham.
Are kind of part and parcel with the history of New Orleans and some of the crimes that have led to its notoriety.
Yeah.
Many of which are not things that we ever want to celebrate by any stretch of the imagination, because a lot of them have to do with slavery and negative things that happened to people who were less fortunate. But it's really kind of a cool thing to do a walking tour of the French Quarter.
Oh, yeah.
And that history mixes so nicely with the ghost stories.
Oh, the supernatural of New Orleans. It's one of the most supernatural places in the world. Ask anybody and they will agree.
And I think there are far too many of those stories to share in this episode.
Yeah,
so maybe
we should have
do
another
one.
episode about just all the ghost stories of New Orleans and all the awesome people that have come from New Orleans stories. Absolutely. But Anne Rice wrote her series, right? Based on known facts.
That's right.
Vampires do exist in New Orleans. And I can say there is a vampire ball that does exist. And I know that there are also vampire bars in New Orleans.
Yes. And I can remember, this was back in the 80s, Anne Rice used to have an annual Halloween party at the Columns. And if you ever went to one of those parties, you would definitely definitely acknowledge that vampires
yeah.
are real.
I've also heard she's got really creepy dolls in her room.
I don't know that she does anymore, but she did.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But there's also very famous, and I'm sure many of you know this one. If you've ever watched American Horror Story, you definitely know our voodoo queen, Marie Laveau.
And there are other voodoo queens. I mean, I think some of them are lesser known, but it's a natural part of the city.
Yeah.
And if you're not sure about whether vampires or voodoo queens or
Witches
mystic,
or ghosts.
right?
Yeah.
Mystic types of phenomena exist. Check out Esoterica in the Quarter and ask for Lady Mimi. She will tell you the truth.
She will tell you the cold hard truth, whether
Yes.
you like it or not. She will tell you how it is.
Just like that. Yeah, you've experienced that. Yeah.
And I love her for
What
it.
was the name of her dog?
I can't remember, but she's got the sweetest dog.
I don't think he's around anymore. Well, he was older when it's been a while. And
Yeah.
He was older.
Sweetest dog, though.
Yeah.
But there, and I want to say that there are many shops that can be tourist traps, So just know that Lady Mimi, Esoterica, it's the real deal.
Yeah, very much. And if you get a chance, stop by the columns. The history is pretty phenomenal, and it's kind of fun to sit out and watch the streetcars and have a drink.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could have a traditional New Orleans drink.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
You never know what you're drinking when you're in New Orleans.
Just be careful no one gets near your drink.
Well, that's true too.
Yeah.
But
And another thing that I think is just a universal in New Orleans that makes it special is the food.
I miss the food so much.
There's nowhere else in the world where you can get away with sucking to heads and
Eating the tails.
after Berlin to crawfish.
Berlin to crawfish.
with the potatoes and the corn, darling.
Yeah. And then, crawfish étouffée, which is my favorite.
Crawfish Monica.
Oysters, oysters.
It's raw oysters. And oyster dressing.
Yes.
Stacy
my
makes
gosh.
amazing oyster dressing.
She does.
Yeah, she
I do
really
miss
does.
the food so much, and the roux that they use, and just it's the spices. You can't get it anywhere else. There are places that people will come from New Orleans and go open up their own restaurants, and it'll be very familiar, very similar. But it's really like you got to be there. There's something about being there.
It does. It makes it. I can cook stuff. Well, not that I cook, but I have been known to cook.
I'm like, could you?
Yeah, I can. I have been. Back in the day, I used to make a mean red beans and rice with carrots instead of bacon.
Red beans and rice.
And then I also used to make a pretty mean crawfish étouffée.
I have had your crawfish étouffée, and it's really good.
Yeah, I just don't. I mean, it's.
Well, so
I
you
don't
gotta
have a
go
kitchen.
get the crawfish, and you gotta make
gotta
sure
get
it's
the
good crawfish, right? Exactly.
And I think the other thing that is world renowned in kind of making people aware of how special New Orleans is the music.
Oh, the music. We could do an entire episode just about the musicians who have come out of that city.
Yeah.
From Louis Armstrong to, who's the phenomenal, he's like a newer artist and he's incredible and he's from New Orleans. He's won so many awards.
John Batiste?
Yes, thank you. Yes. Jean Baptiste.
There's so many.
The
Neville Brothers?
Mercy. Thank you. I was going to have to do my
Aaron
Neville brother
Neville?
impression. I didn't want to. Yes, the
No,
Neville
no.
brothers.
Yeah.
Who I've
many.
met. They're very kind. Yeah, it's just, the music is
Well, I can remember
beyond compare.
way before you were born, going down uptown and listening to not somebody from New Orleans, but this just speaks to kind of the culture in New Orleans. Going down and listening to Bonnie Raitt, and it was $5 to get
Oh
in.
my gosh.
Yeah.
Lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just Irma Thomas.
Oh,
One of
Irma Thomas.
I mean, think about one of the last adventures we had with Yurgami was
I was
going
going to listen to Irma Thomas in the park.
at Audubon Zoo.
At Audubon Zoo. That's right, it was. It was
It was
Audubon
Audubon
Zoo.
Zoo. And Yurgami was there with her handkerchief. She was just going to town with Irma.
It was great.
Yeah, it's a city that's unlike any place else in the world. It has soul.
Truly.
And the French Quarter is especially special.
Oh, there's
because
music everywhere.
Everywhere.
And it's phenomenal. There's tap dancers. There's kids on the corner tap dancing, and I mean, these kids are good. The musicians are phenomenal, and they play because they love it. Like, if you tip them, great, but they're out there no matter what because they love it.
Yeah.
You hear that solo saxophone player at night, like, that's not a cliche, that's real.
Yeah, it's very true. And
that's real.
I lived in the quarter before you were born.
Yeah.
And even the horses and mules that were going back to their stalls at night, when you would hear their hooves hitting the pavement.
Cobblestone, right?
No, it was just pavement.
Oh, okay.
Not cobblestone.
Well, because there are some kind of still like cobblestone old streets throughout the quarter.
Yeah, well, it's underneath the pavement.
True.
Yeah. But there's a lyrical quality to that sound. I can remember I lived on the 3rd floor, and I had a fire escape that was outside of one of the windows, and I would just kind of open that window and sit and listen to the sound of the clip clop, clip clop, clip clop, and it was just, I don't know, it had a magical feel to it.
Even when I used to play on New Year's Eve at the Tropical Isle,
which sadly is very close to where this happened.
Very close to where the travesty happened.
Kind of scary.
Yes, very scary. Very weird to think about, it being so near the Sugar Bowl and everything. But I used to play at the Tropical Isle. 3 hours, I think, was my set, and people would come in and listen, and they had a blast. It didn't matter what I was playing, but people loved it. I mean, partly because they were drunk, but also...
But you made a shit ton of money.
I did. It was great. But I loved being a part of the musician scene down there and being able to play, down in the 9th Ward, or what they call the Bywater now, at Bar Redo, and having like a standing seat there, being able to play and just being a part of the musician scene and being able to watch musicians and burlesques and just the creative part of the city just come alive. It's so inspiring in so many ways.
Yeah, and we're going back to celebrate my birthday in a couple of weeks, and being able to go down to the farmers market and to go down and be in the French Quarter and try to find the good again.
Yeah.
In a situation that was just so horrific. There's no place like New Orleans, and what we've shared in this episode only touches barely on some of the things that make it special, and why as a community it rises to meet challenges like hurricanes and violence with a determination to not only learn from the past, but to create a more resilient future for its children.
Absolutely.
And when I think about the place that I'll always call home, it just brings up so many good memories.
Yeah, it really does.
And even in the wake of something that can be so negative and so sad, it
almost makes you want to go home.
It does, and make a difference.
Right, absolutely.
Right. It really does.
Yeah.
So, I do think that anyone who is questioning whether they should go to New Orleans now, we encourage you to go.
Yes, we hope you will.
Because it will be safer now than it's ever been.
Not only that, but you will be helping a city, giving back to those who have lost and those who
are still healing.
Yeah.
Because people are going to need to heal.
Yeah.
The city itself will need to heal. And so we really do encourage anyone, especially if you've never been there, to give it a chance.
Yeah.
This is an anomaly when we think of things that have happened across the country.
Yeah, it really
is an anomaly. And violent crime for years has been going down in New Orleans. So
yeah, usually it's organized.
That's not so much anymore. Back in my day, it was highly organized.
Okay, Not to make light of anything, but
No. But we also encourage you to help the victims.
we do.
If you're in the New Orleans area, you can donate blood through the Blood Center, and the locations across the city can be found through its website,
Which is www.thebloodcenter.org. Right. And we will include it in the show notes.
And or give to your local Red Cross if you're in other parts of the country. And that is www.redcrossblood.org. The other thing that you can do is contribute to the funeral expenses through GoFundMe. Almost everyone who was affected by this has someone who's created a GoFundMe account. And most of those people are either the families or the employers of those individuals.
Yeah.
And for our purposes, we're going to encourage people to donate to the individuals who are leaving children behind. Nicole Perez left behind a young son, Milo, and
Reggie Hunter left behind 2 young sons.
Right. Yeah. So if you go to GoFundMe
and type in their names, which will also be in the show notes,
their opportunities for giving kind of rose to the top, right? And we're going to donate to these 2 because I just, I can't imagine.
I can't imagine it. I don't want to imagine it.
Being a child who has lost your mom or your dad.
Yeah, it's a hard one for me to think about.
Yeah.
So,
we hope that we all feel empowered when we do something. So we hope that you will do something and regain some of the power for everyone that's been affected by this situation. And again, we hope if you're in the city that you'll remember what makes it so special. If you've never been to the city, that you'll go there and embrace its just magical quality, right? And if you're someone who's been and oh, honey,
I'm sorry, I'm crying. This really hit me harder than I expected. I mean, I didn't expect it to. It's crazy how we're so used to things like it's a shame that we're so used to things like school shootings and things happening, but this one really hit home because you never expect it to happen in places where you're from or in places where you used to play at that very street on that very night, and it's
well, and not that we're going to prolong this episode, but it happened here, literally.
Yeah.
Within walking distance of where we live when the Covenant school shooting happens.
Right. It's just...
So, we need as a nation to stop worrying about ourselves and begin worrying about our collective.
Yeah. And really just
create some empathy.
Empathy, freaking come from a place of love. Start to, it's if you're preaching to love thy neighbor, learn to love thy neighbor no matter what.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we'll close on that.
We will.
And
we thank you.
We know that normally we have an upbeat podcast that is fun and I laugh a lot. But
she cackles.
I do cackle. I cackle a lot. It's the witch in me.
It is.
And it's the momster in me.
It's the voodoo momster in you.
It is.
Which I will say, just my mom has the craziest, coolest voodoo doll collection in the world.
I do.
You really do.
Yes, which your Gami started for me. Yeah, and anybody who walks into my house knows in an instant.
Oh yeah,
where
we're from.
Yeah, yeah, because I have all the NOLA shit. Anyway.
And when you're from NOLA, you're just so proud to be from New Orleans.
So. And we actually have a sign in our house that reminds us of that.
Is it the Beware one?
No.
It's the it's the Blame It on My NOLA Roots.
That's right. Just blame it on my NOLA roots.
Blame it on my NOLA roots.
So I had to go get the sign and pull it out rather than just share it.
Yes.
It just seemed like it needed to be pulled out of the drawer
It did.
after the holidays to put back up. So I killed two birds with one stone.
So we appreciate you listening. Thank you for hearing us out and for being a part of this podcast and supporting us. And if you have any issues with us, just blame it on our NOLA roots.
That's right. Blame it on our NOLA roots. And we hope that you will
listen, rate, review, and subscribe and share.
On whatever podcast app you're
and whatever podcast
using.
platform you're using. And we are sending you so much love, sending you so much light and magic.
And if you have a NOLA story, feel free to share it. We would
Please feel free to share it.
We
would
would
love to hear
love to be able to hear it, whether it's a ghost story or a wonderful experience with food or music.
Yeah.
If you share it with us, we'll share it on the podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for listening.
You guys take care.
Laissez les bon temps rouler.